This is Danielle Harris, and you are listening to Rock Video Rental.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to Rock Video Rental. We are back with our Halloween series marathon. Today we are talking about 1981's Halloween 2. It's directed by Rick Rosenthal. This time it is written and produced by John Carpenter. The plot: while Sheriff Brackett and Dr. Loomis hunt for Michael Myers, a traumatized Laurie Strode is rushed to the hospital, and the serial killer is not far behind her. The cast, we got lots of reoccurring people. We got Jamie Lee Curtis comes back as Laurie Strode. Donald Pleasence returns as Dr. Loomis. Charles Cyphers as Sheriff Brackett again. This time we got Dick Warlock playing Michael Myers, which Dick Warlock is an amazing name. And then we got Leo Rossi as Bud. I put him in there because he's one of the funnier characters. But yeah, Dick Warlock, I mean, can you really get a better name than that? So, this movie is one of the few sequels that, picks up directly after the first one ends.
Mm-hmm.
You could literally edit these two movies together to make it feel like one long movie.
Yeah.
The first time I saw this, I was like, oh my gosh, this is really cool, because I just got done watching the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it really blends pretty well. I will say that the tone of this movie is a lot more brutal than the original.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of reflective of the movies that Halloween influenced, like the Friday the 13th series. Things like My Bloody Valentine, that came out the same year as this. Some of your early 80s slashers, like Prom Night, which also has Jamie Lee Curtis in it. This kind of lends itself towards those because that was popular at the time. So,
mm-hmm.
Basically, at the end of the first one, we knew what happened. Michael fell into the grass. Dr. Loomis looks at him. He's laying there, presumably dead. Goes back, checks on Laurie. Goes back, looks out the window. Michael's gone. Then we just hear the breathing in the mask, which was one of the best endings to a horror movie.
Yeah.
Really good, impactful ending. This one starts off with kind of a short recap of what happened. We get Loomis firing shots again at Michael. He's gone. Michael or Dr. Loomis runs downstairs to go look for him. Goes outside. And that's kind of like when the hunt starts. They're trying to find Michael.
Can I interject some real quick?
Yeah.
One thing that now, of course, I'm not knocking this movie because I think it's another great one to follow up the first one. But after I did watch this one twice, getting ready for this review. And what I think would have made an amazing beginning to this one to do the recap is if they did a slow zoom or pan towards the front of the house. That was the house at the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just slowly going towards it. And then they recreate what happened at the end in a single shot. The kids come running out of the house. They're still panning towards the house. Dr. Loomis runs in. You hear the gunshots. Michael Myers comes and he falls out. And then when he falls, you get close enough and he falls below the camera view.
Mm-hmm.
And then Loomis comes out and looks for him and he's gone.
Yeah, that'd have been pretty cool.
Because you already have all the context and everything, and just getting that brief, because they did the very brief wrap up and everything or recap to show you everything. But watching it the second time, I was kind of like, they didn't need to do all that.
Yeah.
So, but of course,
I mean, back in the time, because the original's from 1978, this came out in 81, so it was 3 years later.
I don't care. Quit being logical.
Back in the early 80s, they would do kind of refreshers and sequels. Friday 13th did a million times.
Oh yeah. No,
And
this
this
is
one
like,
was definitely a lot more compact than Friday the 13th was.
don't blemish this review episode by bringing up Friday the 13th and their recap attempts.
20-minute recaps.
Let's talk by the fire for 10 minutes.
Yeah, we don't get any of that here. Like I said, Loomis comes downstairs. He's looking for Michael, and
You
the
don't know
neighbor
what
comes
death
out.
is.
Yeah, he drops my favorite line in the entire series, where the neighbor comes out and he's like, "What's going on?" And he's like, "Go back in your house. Call the cops. Tell them I shot him. I shot him 6 times." And the guy's just like, "Is this some kind of prank? Because I've been trick-or-treated to death tonight." And Loomis turns and he's like, "You don't know what death is," and then runs off.
And the music starts.
Yeah, do 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 do. I noticed this time that the theme is a little different. It's got some synth in it.
Mm.
And like it's not as simple as it was in the first one. It's still good, and it's kind of cool that they changed it a little bit for this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You might not notice it unless you've watched the movie a million times, like I have.
Yeah. Loomis, it really became I'm not saying like the favorite character, but a favorite character for sure between these two films. Like the second one,
yeah.
he really did a great job.
Yeah, and he slowly just like slips into madness. He becomes like completely and utterly like consumed by trying to find and stop Michael. Sheriff Brackett shows up and he's telling him what's going on, and during this time too, they show that they were able to get Lori to the hospital, and obviously she's pretty much like catatonic after dealing with all this. What happened in the first movie? I believe she's got like a broken arm and a injured ankle, so she's pretty banged up. She's got like the cut on her shoulder too from where Michael cut her. But this is where Sheriff Brackett gets like informed that his daughter is dead. So they all jump in the car, go over to his house, and they like wheel Annie out, and this is when like Loomis starts going crazy and saying, we gotta stop him. He's not human. He's like, I shot him 6 times. He says that like hundreds of times in this movie.
Yeah.
Which cracks me up. That it's become like an infamous line from this movie. And now like the hunt is on. They're trying to find Michael. Some crazy stuff happens. Like the dude dressed like Michael. Like, who is going and putting on this costume? Because if you remember from the first one, Michael got the mechanic suit because he killed that mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
He got the mask because he went into a hardware store and just stole a mask. Who would have thought to put those things together on purpose?
Yeah. Now
it's the same night.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking that same thing too. And that little scene there honestly surprised me because I was not I don't know, like I don't know what I was expecting. Because they saw the person dressed like it, and it was just like, oh, that's him. And of course, I mean, you're just like, no, that's not going to be him. Like, come on.
Oh yeah, the mask has blonde hair.
Yeah, and then everything that transpired immediately following.
Yeah, Loomis starts like wildly firing shots, which cracks me up because he's just crazy. And then this one cop comes out of nowhere and plows into the guy, hits a truck, and it explodes.
Yeah.
And then, like, how fast was that dude driving?
No idea.
In a neighborhood, he had to be going at least 50.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, the cop, like, staggers out of the car, and he's like, he came out of nowhere. I'm like, dude, he slowly walked in front of you, and you didn't even swerve or hit your brakes.
And kids are trick-or-treating, man. I don't even think, did he have his siren on? or his
I don't
lights
think
on?
so. No, he was doing like 50 and a 25. Always a great decision.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, we get, Michael kind of shows up at the hospital and he's trying to hunt down Lori and he's just laying waste to everybody in his way. Um, Lori realizes like Michael's coming for her. She's been like medicated, so she's kind of half out of it. And the rest of the movie is just kind of like Michael slowly coming after Lori, and Lori like staggering away like in a half drug stupor.
Hmm.
And I don't know, like I love the final chase scene in the first movie, but this one is like way more intense. I feel like just because Lori was of sound mind and body in the first one. This one, she is like I said, in a stupor because of the meds. She's pretty banged up. She's got like the hurt arm and the ankle. Um, she's like limping around, barely with it. Like she's not able to run, but Michael doesn't run either.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a few scenes that are really intense, like where she goes into an elevator,
Hmm.
and
Which is always a bad choice.
yeah, she ends up she has to wait for the elevator, of course, to come down to the basement where she's at. Um, she gets in it, and then the door starts to close, and Michael sticks his arm in, and somehow the doors still close,
Yeah, good
but
old
she's able to get out of
80s elevator.
it. Yeah, it's like the door's gonna close. It's probably just gonna rip your arm off. It's the '80s. But yeah, she ends up like getting away. Loomis finally shows up and knows that Michael's there. Fires more shots into Michael. You think he's dead. Surprised he's not.
Except for Loomis. Loomis is
Yeah.
like, he's not dead.
Get away from him. He's not human.
His chest is moving.
Yeah. Oh, and he kills the guy. And then, starts coming after him again. He gets led into this room, and Loomis is going crazy. And Laurie's got a gun, shoots him in the eyes. So Michael's like blinded. Can't see, and he's just wildly swinging the scalpel around.
Yeah, shoots him in the eyes.
Yeah,
Blinds him, but doesn't kill him.
Yeah, I'll get to that. So he's just like violently swinging this knife around, and Loomis is like ripping the oxygen hoses out of the wall, tells Laurie to get out of the room, and once Laurie gets out, Loomis lights a lighter and blows them both up, seemingly killing both of them in the process. In the end, we get to see Michael laying, comes out of the room, staggers out, falls down, and you can just see like the flames pouring out of the holes in the mask, which is a really cool shot.
Yeah.
And yep, end of movie. So
well, and then the official end is Laurie leaving in the ambulance with Sandman song.
Yeah, Mr. Sandman, which was a great choice.
Yeah, it actually I thought it was kind of weird and quirky, but then I was like, I mean, honestly, it's still a solid ending.
Yeah. Yeah, that song is just got kind of a creepy tone to it. You never really think of that until it's put in this situation. So some interesting things I kind of thought about and noticed. At the beginning when Michael falls into the grass, did you notice the hilarious outline of this body in the grass?
Yeah.
It looked like somebody took the shape of the dude off the men's room sign and put it on the grass. Or like in cartoons when Bugs Bunny will run through a wall and it's like perfectly shaped like his body. That always cracks me up. I guess these aren't going to be really in order, but we talked about Laurie shooting him in the eyes. How amazing of a shot is Laurie with a pistol?
Right.
To shoot a guy who's over 6 foot in the eyes when she's sitting on the floor and she's under like medication.
Mm-hmm.
And she not doesn't just shoot out one eye; she shoots out both. And Michael's still alive, and he just has blood running down his mask from the eye holes,
Yeah, don't
which
worry.
is
Rub some dirt on it.
which is a cool shot. But yeah, that always cracked me up. Like, Laurie, you're alive, and you're an amazing shot.
Have you ever considered a career in professional skeet shooting?
Right? Um, I mentioned Leo Rossi as Bud. He's kind of a funny character. He's like a male nurse.
Hmm.
He is just like foul mouthed and everything. And there's one line that really cracks me up where he's like talking, and his nurse says to him like, "Everything everything you say is just hell, shit, or damn." And he's like, "Sorry, I guess I just f up all the time," which cracks me up every time I watch it. But he's kind of a funny character.
That
Um,
him and the nurse or whatever, that section of the movie totally reminded me of which Friday the 13th was it? Was it Jason Goes to Hell? That he was in the hospital? No.
no, it was the final chapter,
Okay.
part 4. Yeah,
Yeah, so he was in there and there was
yeah,
that interaction between, the doctor and the nurse or whatever it was. So
yeah. And the guy looks really similar too.
yes, I was going to mention that.
Yeah, I always get those two kind of mixed up. So this is just me, like, I have 2 kids, and my youngest was just born in 2020. So, recently, did you notice the quote unquote newborns that were in the prenatal unit or whatever?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so one of them rolled over in the crib thing they had. Which, if you don't have kids, they normally start doing around like what, 3 months,
Yeah.
4 months? I mean, mine did.
Yeah, it's months down the road, yeah.
Yeah, it was just kind of funny that they're like these big 3, 4 month, 5 month babies, and these cribs are supposed to be newborns. That kind of just cracked me up.
Well, that was a weird scene together anyways, because like Michael Myers in the room with all the babies.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure what was going to happen there, but it also was a cool shot too, because then there was the nurse's station and they showed his perspective watching them at the nurse's station, and then they
Mhm.
flipped to the opposite side and you couldn't really see him in the background but because his mask was white, you could see him move.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty cool shot.
Yeah, they always do, like in these earlier ones, they did a really good job of lighting effects. And one of my favorite shots in like all of horror is that scene in the first one where Laurie's like crying by the doorway, and it's just like a dark room behind her, and you see Michael's mask just like show up behind her.
Hmm.
Like, that's one of my favorite, not even in horror movies, it's just like one of my favorite scenes, like, and shots in like all film. It's just
Yeah.
so effective.
Well, they
And it's
kind of
something that's like
recreated
lost
it.
in new horror movies too.
Yeah. They kind of recreated it in this one with the in the doctor's office.
Yeah.
So
So those are like a few things that kind of stood out to me. I can get into like the kills too, because we usually do that in these movies.
before we do that, can we talk real quick about how two major things that stood out to me in this.
Mhm.
One, how few people run a hospital.
Right.
And then two, how irresponsible they are, especially that one with taking care of the babies.
Yeah.
That she goes off and starts fooling around with that guy, and it's just like, what, like, this is the 80s. You guys don't have all this computer system stuff where you have like a pager connected to their monitors, and like if something happens, and she's
Dude, you
like
just
in some,
answered it though, because it was the 80s.
yeah, but it's like she's in some hot tub room, and it's just like, how far away are you from the babies right now? They could be screaming their heads off, and you would have no clue.
Yeah. It's just kind of like um, a lot of rules have changed with things because, like, I can almost guarantee you that when you and I were babies, that our moms just let us sleep on our bellies,
Yeah.
and you're not supposed to do that. But yeah, I don't know. Just there's a lot of stuff people talk about, like how dimly lit the hospital is, and
Hmm.
how um, there's hardly anybody there. There's a lot of talk of that when people criticize this movie, but I got kind of a thing about that in my trivia. But
Yeah, and
um,
but I mean, it's a smaller town. Yeah, I mean, there are a couple things that could explain some of those. So,
yeah. Did you have anything else that kind of stood out to you?
um, hang on. Um, let's reapproach this at the end because I have a feeling you might cover some of them, so I don't want to like get you off track.
Hmm.
So go ahead and get started, and if you don't touch on it by the end, I'll bring some up.
Okay. Um, so I guess let's see here. The kills. The first one is Alice is stabbed in the chest with a knife. She's before Michael even, he's like on his way to the hospital. Ben Tramer is the guy that gets hit by the car. You might remember him as being mentioned as Laurie's crush in the first one. So he's the dude who's dressed like Michael.
Oh yeah.
And it's kind of like in a roundabout way they mention that because I didn't pick up on it until this time. So Mr. Garrett, he gets hit in the head with a hammer. And Bud, he gets strangled with a cord. And Nurse Karen gets drowned in scalding hot water that doesn't seem to burn Michael.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up.
I always thought about that when I watched this. Um, Dr. Mixter gets stabbed in the eye with a syringe. Nurse Janet gets injected with an air bubble from a syringe. Nurse Virginia gets her blood drained by an IV line. That was pretty gruesome.
Mm-hmm.
And probably the most memorable one is Nurse Jill gets stabbed in the back and lifted off the ground with a scalpel.
Yeah.
And that one's really effective because like she struggles for a little bit and then you see the point when she dies because her shoes just fall off. Because like her feet go down and her shoes just drop off.
Yeah.
And like that was a really like effective shot and like addition to that I like appreciated that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
that little extra detail really, took it further.
oh yeah. Then the last one is Marshall Gummel gets his throat slit with a scalpel. Oh,
Mm,
and Loomis and Michael blow up in the hospital.
yeah.
For now.
Dun, dun, dun. Um, yeah, well, talking about kills real quick, I did have this down on wondering why. Okay, so and maybe you'll have more information on this. I don't want to get too ahead of things in like what's gonna come and kind of explain some things with Michael, but why did he kill that girl at the beginning?
She was
Like
there.
it wasn't necessary. Why didn't he kill the old people?
Um, that's a good question.
Because like there now because part of me was just like, oh, he killed her because he didn't want to risk like her knowing that he was there or something like that, but
Yeah.
then he obviously left evidence for the old people. Like he could have stolen the knife, and if there was no blood they would have never known the difference, but there was the blood, so they freaked out. So there was more of a chance that they would call the police than that girl.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if there's some sort of pattern showing up where he has some kind of obsession with killing girls because of the association with his sister.
Could have been.
That was something that kind
But
of I
and then
had a
everybody
question mark
like
on.
all the guys just kind of seem to be in his way.
Yeah, Yeah, anything outside of that usually is because somebody's in his way or he needs something.
Hmm.
So,
So, you want to dive into trivia? I got lots.
I think two two things to mention before
Hmm.
jumping into trivia. One is it was really funny the first time that because I watched this twice. The first time I watched it, there was some kind of disconnect from the server I was watching it from, and there was almost exactly 12 minutes left in the movie. Do you want to know what's happening when there are 12 minutes left in the movie?
What?
Loomis is shooting Michael Myers. Like right in the middle of like the climax. Loomis is shooting Michael Myers. All of a sudden it like shuts down on me. I was like, "Come on, there's 12 minutes left." I had to wait like half an hour for it to reboot.
I shot him 6 times.
So that was a great first experience with that.
Yeah.
But then the other thing, and so if you're gonna address this like later, we can address it later. But the fact that Laurie's his sister.
Yeah.
Are we gonna talk about that later?
Yeah, it's kind of shoehorned into this, and it really takes the kind of the mystique away from it. Kind of like now they gave it Michael a motive, and I'm not sure that's good
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like it's scarier just thinking that he's just crazy.
Yeah. I agree with you on that. Like I liked it because honestly, it's kind of funny because I don't know if it was with you or somewhere else down the line, but I remember I knew Lori was his sister, but I forgot.
Yeah.
Because I didn't watch the movies, but somehow, somewhere I heard about that. And so when that was revealed, I was just like, oh yeah, I remember that. And then I was like, oh, that's kind of lame. Because I do agree too, where if he's just, crazy and doing his own thing, because originally watching the first one, I thought he was trying to kill her because of the association he had with his original sister.
Yeah.
And
Judith.
so now that she's his actual sister, you're right, that kind of changes things and it makes it different.
Yeah, it really kind of um changed things for the series, and we'll get into that when we get to like parts 5 and 6
Yeah.
because it doesn't really change things for the best.
Yeah. Well, then
Uh,
my question that came up from that is, I mean, I think they kind of alluded to it a little bit, but how did he know that she was his sister? Like, were they alluding to that they actually met?
well, I would think so, like,
But
because Lori would have been a baby.
yeah, but they showed that like little crap, what is it? The daydream kind of thing that she had
Hmm.
where she was older and she saw him as a kid.
Yeah.
So like was that alluding to that she saw him when he was a little bit older, but she forgot about the memory? Because I'm just kind of like, if she, so was she? I can't remember what the lineup was. She born before her sister was killed?
I believe so.
Okay, then that kind of makes sense. But I wasn't sure if it was after that because I'm just kind of like, if they were alluding to that they met after her sister was killed, like what human in their right mind would think that would be a good idea for this kid who killed one of his sisters to be introduced to the other sister?
Right.
So that was something that I was trying to wrap my head around, and maybe I'll look into it more before we do the next movie. But trying to figure out how they were trying to explain that.
Dude, you are going to be diving into a really twisted, non-linear storyline. Just wait until we get farther into it. It might even be murkier than Friday the 13th.
No. Okay.
It kind of goes all these crazy directions later on. But trivia. So you mentioned about the hospital, so I'll drop this one first. One common criticism of the movie is that the hospital is too conveniently dead, even for a night shift,
Mm-hmm.
for Michael to be able to walk around like unnoticed and kill the hospital staff. But director Rick Rosenthal said he based this off his personal experience he had with his wife, where they were once attending a hospital late at night and it was completely deserted, except for a few doctors and nurses and the patients.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I
So,
mean,
and it's also like kind of at the beginning, they say that it's Haddonfield Clinic and not a fully staffed hospital.
yeah, but then I
And if you
think,
notice, there was only like 3 floors.
yeah, but then also, if I'm not mistaken, it had MHM or no, uh, HMH was on the
Yeah,
door. Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, I think is what that stood for.
probably.
So yeah, I can see that. I mean, like it didn't bother me too much. Like I kind of go. I mean, I've been in and out of different hospitals, emergency room kind of things at weird hours and all that. And I mean, I think one of the main differences is now they always have the lights on. Like no matter what, there could be like one patient, no patients. They're gonna have the lights on everywhere. That's just like standard hospital procedure.
Yeah,
Because if you have the lights off and somebody slips and falls, lawsuit. But so the 80s with it being dark and everything, I mean, it wasn't too far fetched for me. That didn't bother me too much.
yeah. Really, the only time I've ever seen like a darker hospital is like the the baby area.
Yeah.
Like when you have a baby, it's usually they dim the lights at night so you can sleep better.
Hmm.
But okay, some of the other stuff I got here. So the mask that Michael wears is the exact same mask from the original.
Oh, nice.
Um, it looks a little bit different in the sequel because the paint had faded due to like a few reasons. Um, First being like Nick Castle, he was like the original Michael. He kept it in his back pocket during shots.
Oh,
So
idiot.
yeah, and then Deborah Hill, um, she kept the mask under her bed for several years until the filming of Halloween 2, causing it to like collect dust and yellow because she was a heavy smoker. Also, the mask appears wider because Dick Warlock is shorter and stockier than Nick Castle,
Hmm.
so the mask fit like on his head differently. Um, so the producers thought it would be the final in the series, and they let Dick Warlock keep the mask, scalpel, boots, jumpsuit, and knife used in filming. When they decided to revive Michael in Halloween 4, the producers realized that they had made this mistake, and they never gave out props to the cast and crew again.
Uh,
uh, they used different masks too, but
Honestly,
that's
when
kind
they
of
made
okay.
the first one, I mean, if they were thinking about it, they should have bought like half a dozen masks.
Yeah, I think it might have been a budget thing because it was so low budget.
Yeah, but how expensive would those masks be? No, I
Shut
get it.
Shut So to get the role of Michael Myers, Dick Warlock revealed that he had passed by a room and the Michael Myers mask was on a table. He walked in, grabbed it, put it on, and walked into Rick Rosenthal's office and just stood there. And after like Rosenthal like continuously asked him who he was, and he didn't reply, I think he took the mask off and asked if he could play Michael Myers, and he let him. That's kind
that
of funny.
that is funny.
So I mentioned earlier that Carpenter produced and wrote this.
Hmm.
He didn't like the director Rosenthal's first version of the film. But he believing it to be as scary as an episode of Quincy M.E., which was a TV show from the 70s. So he had a re-edit done, um, and then Carpenter still found it too tame. So he took over the editing process and sped up the action. He also shot a few gory scenes that were added into the film, even though Rosenthal didn't want them in there. This annoyed Rosenthal because he had wanted the sequel to emulate the way the original avoided violence and gore in favor of suspense and terror. Carpenter intended Halloween 2 to do that, but the success of the slashers from 79 and 80 and made him afraid that a film which was scary and rated R but lacked bloodshed and nudity would do poorly in the box office.
That's a little bit of a bummer because I did notice that, and it definitely felt more Friday the 13th than the original Halloween was more of the suspense.
Yeah, it's
unknown.
more of a slow burn. And
yeah, I mean, I appreciated more kills this time because there was more action, or however you want to say it.
Mm-hmm.
But I did like that style they went with in the first one, on being more of like, you never know when something's going to happen rather than, the manner it was carried out.
Yeah, I get that. So Carpenter later said that he thought that Rosenthal didn't have a feeling for what was going on with the film. And then what's funny is Rosenthal would go on to direct Halloween Resurrection in 2002. So Carpenter and Debra Hill had no interest in making a sequel. They wanted Halloween to be a standalone movie. When the studio offered him more money to write the script, Carpenter took the job so he could earn back what he believed he was owed for the first one. Because at the time, he didn't really get much back. However, the script was not forming out as well as he thought it was. And he stated that the only thing that helped him get through the screenwriting process was a 6-pack of Budweiser every day.
Oh my gosh.
Which led to what he believes is an inferior script and bad choices in a movie story. He later calls Halloween 2 an abomination and a horrible movie.
Oh.
Which I don't agree with.
Yeah.
So, in the 3 years between the shooting for Halloween and Halloween 2, Jamie Lee Curtis got a different hairstyle, and it was shorter. Since this movie takes place at the same night, they had to put a wig on her to match her style from the original. And at times, it's a little obvious.
Yeah, I thought she looked a little different.
Yeah. So this is the only Halloween movie to take place on November 1st, which is my birthday.
Ta-da!
In the original Halloween, Dr. Loomis fires 6 shots from his revolver to stop Michael, which he mentions numerous times. In Halloween 2, during the replay, he actually fires 7 shots.
I counted that.
And he never reloads, so he's like Steven Seagal. It also, when Michael falls from the terrace, there's an obvious ramp leading to the top of the railing.
Yep, I noticed that too, and I was just like, that had to have been because the first time that they did it, they filmed it from the other angle, or from the other side, and so you didn't know where he was falling to. So they probably had a bunch of safety stuff and everything, but since he was falling a distance, this time I figured that was the case, because if he just walked back into that, I mean, he probably would have landed on his head.
Probably. So this movie was released on October 30th of 1981, which was a little surprising. Seems like they would have released it a little bit earlier in October since it's a Halloween movie. But whatever. The last couple I got, this one's pretty funny. So the scene where Sheriff Brackett and Loomis and the deputy go to Brackett's house and Annie's body's pulled out, there is a brief cameo by a famous comedian. You can see a guy talking to a therapist. He has a trucker hat on, and it is Dana Carvey.
Oh, okay.
and he's in it for all of like 5 seconds. If you Google it, you can see. The last one I got, this had a $2.5 million budget, and it made 25.5 in a box office.
Rock.
So very profitable.
Mm-hmm.
So grades. Pulled from IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes again. IMDb, what do you think it is?
IMDb, give me 7.8.
It is a 6.5.
Ooh, overshot.
Yeah. And then critic and audience.
Critic, show me 69%.
No, it is 32.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah.
What?
They hated it, I guess.
Gosh.
I don't get it.
I don't get
Audience, what do you think that one is?
68%?
Pretty close, 63.
Okay.
Which I don't get the hate, I guess. I mean, it's, it's not, they're never going to catch lightning in a bottle for a second time,
Yeah.
It was never going to happen. And to make a sequel to such a popular movie that at the time, up until Blair Witch Project came out, it was the most profitable independent movie of all time. And it's still like in the top 5, I think. This one had a much bigger budget. I said it was 2.5 million. The original was like $300,000.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's obvious, like I said, it took a lot of, it's funny because it's almost inspired by movies that it inspired, the original inspired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mentioned, Friday the 13th is one of them. It had the super intense, gory kills. Prom Night had the same thing. Movies along that line. I still think this is a pretty good movie. I love watching it back to back with the original one.
Yeah.
The one thing I say that I don't like about it is the Blu-ray that I have. It's one of those that like it takes forever to load, and then you have to like skip through all this crap at the beginning of it. It's just set up terribly.
Yeah, I
I
know.
mean, I can't really complain. I think I spent like $4.50 on it at Meijer.
Too expensive.
Yeah. It was just like, oh man, this kind of ruins it for me because I had a DVD of it that was way better. But I don't know. I'll just drop my grade right now. The original I gave a 5. This one's not nearly as good as the original, but it's still pretty solid. I would say it's probably the second or third best in the series, but I'll get to my rankings and stuff once we make our long trek through all these. I think it gets a solid 4 out of 5 for me.
Okay. Yeah.
Borderline like 4.5, 4.
Mm-hmm. That I feel is pretty reasonable. I feel like there might have been a decent chance if I just watched it once that I may have given it a 4.5.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna land at a 4 as well. Because and again, like it's not, bashing on it or anything, or but I think it's kind of maybe leaning a little bit more on the critical side, because kind of like noticing those things and thinking about it and talking it through, and some of those things that could have been a little bit different. But man, like it is tough, because as we were talking before we were even recorded this, that it is one of the better sequels that I've seen.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that kind of pushes me to, that was pushing me between the 4 and the 4.5, but I'll stick at 4. They did a really good job with it. Great continuation. Great to have the same characters in it. Good execution. Yeah, obviously not as big of a bang as the first one, because that one just, set the bar, but It was good. I enjoyed it.
Rock. Yeah, I've heard people say that Friday 13th is like the steady series where everything's kind of like, there's a couple stinkers in there, but they're kind of average.
Mm-hmm.
Where Halloween has the highest highs and lowest lows,
Okay.
and I guess A Nightmare on Elm Street is kind of like somewhere in between those. But yeah, I'd say this is probably one of the best, if not, maybe the best slasher sequel, because this kind of fell into sequelitis, just like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street did. But I would say this is definitely one of the better, if not the best, slasher sequel.
Rock.
But now that Michael and Dr. Loomis are dead, where does the series go from here?
What's
And what I
happening?
can say that it goes to Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, which we reviewed before, but I don't know why I love this movie. And the only thing I have in my notes is let's get weird.
It is going to be interesting now that I have experience with the rest of the Halloween series to return to this one.
Yeah, now you can kind of reflect onto it.
Yeah.
And you've watched some more horror movies since then, so you can kind of base it off that. But yeah, so until next time, be kind, rewind.